You can also watch Salvation TV News Hour live on Twitter at Salvation TV Live, Periscope at Salvation TV Live, Twitch Salvation Television. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Salvation TV and like and follow us on Facebook at Salvation Television.
Thanks for joining us on the news. Now the headlines. African Development Bank creates a $10 billion fund for COVID-19 aid. On COVID-19, UN Secretary cancelled to meet over pandemic. Fix refineries before petrol subsidy removal, says Pengasine and Nupeng. These and more after this break. I am Letitia Obianime. Do stay tuned. You can also watch Salvation TV News Hour live on Twitter at Salvation TV Live, Periscope at Salvation TV Live, Twitch Salvation Television. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Salvation TV and like and follow us on Facebook at Salvation Television. You can also watch Salvation TV News Hour live on Twitter at Salvation TV Live, Periscope at Salvation TV Live, Twitch Salvation Television. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Salvation TV and like and follow us on Facebook at Salvation Television. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Minister of Aviation Hadi Sirika has faulted the arrest of 2 pilots of coveting helicopters by the Rivers State government. Mr. Sirika, who was speaking during the Presidential Task Force briefing on COVID-19, explained that it was wrong for the state government to have carried out the arrest within federal government's owned properties without clearance from federal authorities. The pilots were arrested on Tuesday for allegedly violating the executive order issued by the Rivers State governor aimed at curbing the spread of coronavirus in the state. But the aviation minister maintained that their operation was indeed approved by the federal government as it was in line with national interests. Moving on. Troops of Operation Lafia Dole in the northeast have engaged some Boko Haram terrorists who attempted to infiltrate the Nigerian army location at a 3 battalion in the Gambo Road area of Borno State, during which scores of fighters were shot dead. Defense headquarters Abuja says that the Boko Haram and Islamic State West African Province terrorists came to the military location with 7 gun trucks on Monday but met a stiff resistance from the troops. Director, Defense Media Operation, Brigadier General Bernard Onyoko, says in a statement that the troops seized 3 gun trucks, 2 anti-craft guns, 2 AK-47 rifles, and 1 rocket-propelled grenade tube from insurgents. Meanwhile, the coordinator of the Defense Media Operations, General John Eneche, says there was no rift between the Nigerian and Chadian armed forces as being insinuated in some quarters based on Chadian troops' battles with Boko Haram insurgents. And moving on, still in the news, African Development Bank says it has created $10 billion emergency fund to help the continent fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The bank's president, Akinwumi Adesina, says the group is deploying its full weight on emergency response support to assist Africa in her critical time. The facility includes a $5.5 billion for operations in African Development Bank countries and $3.1 billion for sovereign and regional operations for countries over. Under the African Development Fund, the bank aims and caters for fragile countries. African Development Bank has already launched a $3 billion denominated social bond in international capital markets for the fight of the virus. Leadership of the movement of the actualization of African sovereign state of Biafra, MOSOP, yesterday says it would resist the planned Chinese medical assistance to Nigeria in the Biafra territory, warning the government of China to limit the medical services to the Arewa and Oduduwa areas of the country. MOSOP leader Comrade Uchenna Madu in a statement says the assistance should concentrate in the northern and southern west part of the country where the COVID-19 is prevalent. According to MOSOP, the decision to bring the Chinese was part of the grand design by President Muhammadu Buhari to sell Nigeria's economy sovereignty to China. He therefore advised the Eastern Zone of Nigeria Medical Association to reject outright the president's sudden love for the lives of the Igbo people. And coming up next, rocket hits U.S. air base in Afghanistan, no casualties recorded. Federal government cuts 2020 budget by 317.5 billion naira. To stay tuned. You can also watch Salvation TV News Hour live on Twitter at Salvation TV Live, Periscope at Salvation TV Live, Twitch, Salvation Television. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Salvation TV and like and follow us on Facebook at Salvation Television. You can also watch Salvation TV News Hour live on Twitter at Salvation TV Live, Periscope at Salvation TV Live, Twitch, Salvation Television. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Salvation TV and like and follow us on Facebook at Salvation Television. You're welcome back now. The news on the foreign scene. After weeks of disagreement between the United States and China, the UN Secretary Council to meet today to discuss the coronavirus pandemic for the first time. Led by Germany, 9 of the Council's 10 non-permanent members requested a closed-door meeting via video conference to maintain social distancing. Later last week, fed up with the body's inaction over the unprecedented global crisis. Talks are moving in the right direction, diplomat says, and Washington is no longer insisting UN language referred to the virus as coming from China, which had infuriated Beijing. Secretary General Antonio Guterres is expected to focus on efforts to fight the pandemic, peacekeeping missions fostering unity between the non-permanent members and the 5 permanent ones. At least 9 votes out of the 15 are necessary to adopt a resolution without a veto of one of the 5 permanent members. And moving on, still on the foreign scene, 5 rockets hit a major U.S. airbase in Afghanistan on Thursday, but there were no casualties. Afghanistan's NATO-led force said in an attack claimed by Islamic State militant group. The attack comes weeks after Taliban militants and the U.S. states reached a deal on the withdrawal of U.S.-led international troops in exchange for Taliban security guarantees. Islamic State militants have not been included in the pact. Islamic State says in a statement on social media that their fighters had targeted a helicopter landing pad at Bagram. A Taliban spokesman said on Twitter that this group was not behind the attack. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte today says Italy may start gradually lifting some restrictions in place to contain the new coronavirus by the end of April, provided the spread of the disease continues to slow. There were 542 deaths from COVID-19 in Italy on Wednesday, lower than 604 the day before, taking the total death toll to 17,669. There were 3,693 people in intensive care, down from 3,792 on Tuesday, the 5th daily decline in a row. The decline was raised hope the virus is on the retreat thanks to a nationwide lockdown, though the number of new cases rose 3,836 compared with 3,039 on Tuesday, to reach 139,422, the third highest globally behind the United States and Spain. And now in business. National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers says any deregulation in the petroleum sector that is still dependent on importation of oil would affect the economy negatively. Union's General Secretary Afolabi Olawole says the position of the union had always been that the government should fix the refineries and they should be up and running before deregulation. On its own path, the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria describes the removal of the subsidy on petroleum products as a right step in the right direction, but could only be sustainable if the country's refineries were working, arguing that it was difficult to control the price of what one did not produce. And still in business, To reflect the present harsh economic realities occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic, the federal government has adjusted the 2020 budget, slashing the figures by 317.5 billion naira. It will be recalled that the National Assembly had on December 2019 passed a budget of 10.5 trillion naira. The development also affected other components of the budget. Consequently, the crude oil sales family benchmark at $57 per barrel has been slashed to $30 per barrel, while oil production volume has been reduced from 2.7 million barrels to 1.70 million barrels. It was learned that details will be officially sent to the National Assembly for consideration and approval when it resumes plenary next week. And lastly, on the news, Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) yesterday stated that it would no longer be involved in the management of the country's refinery after their ongoing rehabilitation. In a statement in Abuja, Group Managing Director of the NNPC, Malam Melekeri, disclosed that upon completion of the ongoing rehabilitation exercise, the services of the company will be procured to manage the plants on the operations and maintenance basis. Furthermore, the NNPC healthman stated that the decision to finally end the fuel subsidy regime was in the interest of ordinary Nigerians, as it will free up funds for the various tiers of government to develop basic infrastructure in the education, health, transport and other sector for their benefits. And that's it on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Letitia Obianimi. Good afternoon.